Good morning and welcome everyone to our fifth Focus Cities webinar of the year. My name is Garrett Fortine with UC Berkeley SafeTrek, and I'm your host today. For those not familiar, SafeTrek stands for Safe Transportation Research and Education Center. We are a University of California, Berkeley research center affiliated with the Institute of Transportation Studies and the School of Public Health. Our mission is to reduce transportation-related injuries and fatalities through research, education, outreach, and community service. SafeTrek conducts research, provides technical assistance and workshops to communities across California, educates the transportation safety professionals of tomorrow, and coordinates major transportation safety programs for the state of California. We are partners with California Walks for our Focus Cities efforts. California Walks is the statewide voice for pedestrian safety and healthy, walkable communities for people of all ages and abilities. They provide technical assistance to communities to create more walkable communities, and they also work at the state level to advance opportunities for active transportation. We'd also like to acknowledge the support of the California Office of Traffic Safety, who provided a grant through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration for this program. We appreciate their dedicated support of community pedestrian and bicycle safety. Before we dive in, a couple of housekeeping reminders. Please be sure to mute your audio. We will be recording both the webinar audio and chat features, and we will make that recording available afterwards. If you do not want to be recorded, please refrain from talking or using the chat feature. If you have questions throughout the webinar, please type them in the chat box on your screen, and we will answer as many as we can at the end of the presentation. We encourage you to ask questions and make use of this feature. With that, I'm excited to introduce our moderator, Asha Chandy. Asha is the programs manager of Bike Bakersfield, which is the only nonprofit bike kitchen and bicycling advocacy organization in Kern County. She graduated from UC Irvine in 2014 after studying public health policy and criminology. After returning home to Bakersfield in 2016, Asha became involved in active transportation through her work at Bike Bakersfield in grant writing, fundraising, and policy advocacy. She's currently an active transportation planner with the California Bicycle Coalition's Central Valley Bikeways project. All right, now I'll hand over to you, Asha.
Thanks, Garrett. Thanks, Caro, as well, everyone at UC Berkeley and California Walks. I also wanted to thank all of our partners, our local partners here. You can see their logos: Kern County Public Works, City of Bakersfield, CalBike, and Bike Bakersfield, which I'm also representing. So before we go into the slides, I wanted to read some of the bios of our speakers. So first we'll be speaking with Yolanda Alcantar from Kern County Public Works. She was born and raised in Bakersfield and is a graduate from South High School. She received her bachelor's degree in engineering from Cal State Northridge and a master's degree in public administration from Cal State Bakersfield. She's worked for the county for over 22 years and currently manages the Advanced Plan Division in the engineering section of Public Works, which oversees grant applications and environmental reviews, something that's very relevant for bike projects, any sort of active transportation project. Yolanda is literally a legend for doing this, and in the past 5 years, Kern County has been awarded over $117 million in grant-funded projects, with $33.5 million exclusively for active transportation projects. So I want to thank you for joining us, Yolanda. And if you, I'll just introduce Kern County and have you go into some of the works that Public Works and the Walk Kern program is doing. So for those of you not from our county, we are at the very base of the Southern San Joaquin Valley. We're 8,163 square miles, a population of a little under 1 million. We have 11 cities and 59 unincorporated communities that are all split up between 5 supervisorial districts and 3,300 miles of public roads. Some of the challenges we face are air quality because we have mountain ranges, multiple mountain ranges that form a bowl. We have the desert region and the plains, which is really dry and hot. And we have the valley region, which normally has rolling foothills and water and green grasses. So go ahead, Yolanda, if you'd like to introduce Walk Kern and some of the public works projects.
Thank you, Asha. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I wanted to thank OTS, Safe Track, CalWalks, and Bike Bakersfield for the opportunity to highlight some of Kern County's active transportation projects. As you can see, Kern County is massive in size and population. We maintain 3,300 center line miles of road, which translate to over 6,600 lane miles available for biking. So the most significant hindrance we have to the biking network is funding, but we put a lot of effort into seeking grant funds to increase active transportation opportunities. And that's where this Walk Kern website is helpful. This website maps each sidewalk and bicycle project that has been funded since 2007. The county is dedicated to improving safety and public health through increased walking and biking opportunities. And this website allows us to showcase projects currently underway or complete. So as you can see from the next slide, it was actually the Regional Active Transportation Plan coordinated by KernCog that inspired the website. The regional plan outlined all the county's unmet needs and gaps, but we didn't want it to just be our unmet needs. We wanted to highlight what we actually have accomplished. And so that's what Walk Kern accomplishes for us. We have nearly 70 sidewalk and bicycle projects totaling over $70 million that have been funded, including 20 miles of Class 1 bicycle path projects. And these are separated from the road along the sections that go from Hart Park to Lake Ming, 6 miles. From the Kern River Western Extension to Buena Vista Lake is another 7 miles. And we have various segments in Lamont, Tehachapi, Frazier Park, Ridgecrest, and Boron. So each of these are numbered bubbles in that map, if you will, and their specific location and funding summary information in that website. Also, we provide links so that the community can go in and take a survey, and we have stories in there that will outline the community concerns, how we have collision analyses and improvements proposed for each of the last 5 years worth of projects. So on the next slide is a map of the current Class 1 bike path project underway in the metro area of Lamont along State Route 184. This is a joint project with the Housing Authority. They asked us to be a joint applicant for an affordable housing and sustainable community grant. And these are very competitive projects. It needed to include an infrastructure component that reduced greenhouse gas emissions, specifically for key destinations via walking, biking, and transit that would result in fewer vehicle miles traveled and a mode shift. The Housing Authority was successful in securing $11 million to construct a 41 multifamily housing unit in Lamont called Mountain View Village, which had its grand opening last weekend. And the county was awarded over $2 million as part of this project to improve Weedpatch Highway, also known as State Route 184, from Sunset Boulevard to DeGiorgio Highway with 1 mile of sidewalks, 1 mile of Class 1 bike path, which is 10 feet wide, and 2 miles of Class 2 bike lanes, which will be 4 to 6 feet wide. All of which is within Caltrain's right-of-way, which has caused some delays, but we expect to start construction next summer. So for more information about any of these projects, please visit our website, which is www.walkkern.com. You have to put in both words. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Yolanda. One thing I wanted to highlight about the Lamont project is the South Kern community is particularly underserved in terms of infrastructure. And so this housing project, along with this bike lane that's going to connect schools and where people want to go, where people live, it's going to connect them using active transportation. And I'm excited to say that Bike Bakersfield was a part of that housing project application. We are going to start monthly bike events for that housing project in Lamont. So it's going to be a great way for residents to get from Lamont to Arvin and just kind of circulate around South Kern. Up next, we're going to kind of focus in the Bakersfield region. It's the largest metro area in Kern County. We've got a population of a little under 400,000. There are 6 city council wards represented by city council members, including 2 that are on this webinar. And in 2013 was the adoption of the Bicycle Transportation Plan, and 2017, the Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Report that began sort of the major changes to the downtown area and transit projects. By 2017, there were 35 miles of class 2 and 3 bike lanes added to the city routes. And in 2019, the city and Alta developed a bicycle and pedestrian safety plan, which, just like Walk Kern, included resident feedback, outreach events, and online surveys. So you can see from this map that these are the results of that survey, where people had instances of feeling unsafe or had suggestions on improving the walkability or the bikeability of their community. So next, I'm going to introduce Andre Gonzalez. He is our Ward 2 City Council member. He's a board member for Bike Bakersfield, and he's going to be talking about some of the downtown and core Bakersfield projects that are going to connect to the bike network. So a little bit about Andre. Andre was elected to represent Bakersfield Ward 2 in November 2016. Known as the Downtown Ward, Ward 2 encompasses Central Bakersfield from Oleander to 34th Street and East Bakersfield to Quailwood. Andre was born and raised in the Central Valley, and his life has been shaped by a deep commitment to public service and care for others, especially the most vulnerable. He's a proud graduate of East Bakersfield High School and UC Berkeley, and before his election to City Council, Gonzalez served as a trustee on the Bakersfield City School District Board of Education for 6 years. Since 2010, Gonzalez has served as the CEO of Stewards, a Bakersfield-based nonprofit, and is the founder of 4 Kern County-based nonprofit organizations and collaboratives: Faith in Action, Children First, the Kern Alliance of Nonprofits, and the Hub of Bakersfield. So welcome, Andre, and I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Asha, and good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all this afternoon. I'll start by saying downtown has really experienced a renaissance of sorts over the last 10 years and beyond. More people are coming downtown to work, to live, with additional housing projects, and to play, to recreate. And we've seen a resurgence of new restaurants and cafes and a lot of energy in downtown. And so we really know and we understand that a vibrant urban core requires a lot of energy and folks coming in various different ways and utilizing multimodal transportation. And so we've spent a lot of time thinking through how do we create a more walkable, more pedestrian friendly urban core. And we saw an opportunity to do that through the Downtown Vision Plan. This really was a partnership with the California High-Speed Rail Authority to create our station area plan for the high-speed rail. And we saw this as an opportunity to really create independent utility, if you will. That is, to utilize this plan independent of the high-speed rail plans, to really cast a vision for what we'd like to see downtown look like over the next 20 years and beyond, and then begin to use this document as a guiding document for the future. And a lot of that, from what we heard from the community, is more accessibility for pedestrians, right? More mixed use trails and additional bike paths, so that we can create that multimodal transportation that is conducive for a really vibrant urban core. The work has continued throughout downtown through a series of grants. We've we've received $1.3 million in ATP funds for over 19 miles of Class 2 and 3 bike paths. We've been fortunate enough, and we're working through a plan to create a bike share program, which is very popular in lots of cities, and something that we're looking forward to including here in downtown Bakersfield. And really trying to create these enhancements so again, people have an enjoyable experience no matter how they get to the downtown core. In addition to that, we've worked on a number of other projects beyond downtown, including a grant that we received that includes improvements to our sidewalks, and it creates accessible ramps throughout the urban core, and also enhanced crosswalks for some of the areas that are in most dire need, including Chester Avenue, which actually runs the length of the downtown area. We were able to recently create a pedestrian island that makes it far safer for pedestrians to cross. So these enhancements are right in alignment with our vision, and we're working to look for other opportunities to do more work. And I commend my colleague, Councilmember Smith, who has been on the council longer than I have, who has been leading the charge on these efforts for years. In addition, the city received over $630 million over 10 years ago to begin what's called the Thomas Roads Improvement Program. This is a transportation program that has improved the condition of our roadways throughout the region. But included in that was an improvement project in downtown called the 24th Street Improvement Project, which runs the length of the downtown core, connects 178 to Rosedale Highway. And in this plan, in this construction, which is almost completed, by the way, it will include additional enhanced sidewalks with shade and well-lit pathways, and something that's actually very unique to the city of Bakersfield on 24th Street, which is called the Hawk Beacon Signal. This is a high-intensity activated crosswalk that will make it much safer for people to cross the street. Now, how it works is a pedestrian will activate a signal that will then cause a light to create a yellow flash, a yellow light, and then a red light, and then a flashing red sequence to alert motorists that the pedestrian needs to actually cross the street. Once the pedestrian crosses the street, they will enter into the median, which will include a pedestrian refuge and require the pedestrian to walk about 10 feet, at which point they will activate another signal to conclude the crossing of the roadway. And so this is an enhancement that I'm very proud of. Many residents throughout the neighborhood surrounding 24th Street in the Westchester neighborhood, just adjacent to the downtown core, actually had advocated for a number of months, if not years. And so this will be a great enhancement for the connectivity of both the north side and the south side of the Westchester neighborhood, and something that will, I think, be a great amenity for the downtown core. And these are just some visuals of the 24th Street Improvement Project. As you can see, it will include lush landscaping and just be a really great project for the downtown, something that we can be proud of as people come into the downtown core for the first time. We hope that this serves as a great gateway and welcoming banner for individuals visiting our downtown. And then beyond downtown, I also represent East Bakersfield, which has seen a number of projects in its own right over the last couple of years. You're looking at an image of a pocket park that my nonprofit Children First created 2 years ago, which is right in the heart of East Bakersfield. This is a privately maintained park. The city actually is working to also improve the area and add on to the enhancements that have been made in the area through a project we're calling the Kentucky Street Greening Project. And Asha, if you want to go over this slide, I'll let you kind of talk about the EnviroScan.
Okay, yeah. So the Kentucky Street Green Project is about a couple blocks away from the David Nelson Pocket Park that Andre just mentioned. It's a high poverty and high pollution burden area, ranking really high on the Cal EnviroScreen scores. A good example of one of the affected schools is Williams Elementary, which currently is a walking only school. There is no bus service to this campus. So this project, which Andre is definitely leading, is part of a coalition of city and county jurisdictions, the school, Union Pacific Railroad, PG&E, and some of the social justice and nonprofit groups in the area, because we all know together that when we create a safe passageway through these communities, people will use them, especially to walk and bike to school. And when we make it beautiful and usable and pedestrian scale, we know that people will be safer and more inclined to use those facilities. So the picture is from Andre's Instagram. They actually just repaved the street a couple months ago, getting ready for introducing the two-way multi-track along Kentucky Street and starting the landscaping design process. So yeah, I just kind of screenshotted your Instagram. I apologize, Andre. But this is a really exciting project that's going to have a huge impact on Ward 2.
We're very excited about this, and we're looking to award the contract at our upcoming City Council meeting on September the 23rd. And we anticipate project will be completed by the end of this calendar year. And it will include, trees along the length of the sidewalks, including solar powered lights that will also be a great amenity for the area and for a neighborhood that is way too dark. And we're just really excited about seeing this happen, hearing from the community and their demand for more amenities in this direct neighborhood. I think it'll continue that revitalization and ability for us to promote active transportation within East Bakersfield and throughout the community. It's also a great link from Northeast Bakersfield to the downtown area, because for those who commute to work via bicycle, it requires you to actually go through Kentucky Street as the safest route. And so we're looking forward to this for many different reasons.
Yeah, another good point about this project is it will help connect Old Town Kern, which has a lot of historic buildings and restaurants and businesses that have a huge impact on our community. And this is just another way to get people walking and biking by those storefronts. Up next, Andre, if you'd like to talk about these, or I can take them. We're just going to be mentioning some of the Centennial Corridor and other trip projects that are going to be improving biking and walking in the community.
Sure. Well, the Centennial Corridor is an alignment that will connect Highway 58 to ultimately to the I-5, and included in the plan in the construction of this new corridor is the West Park Trail, which will run parallel to the project alignment. This is significant for many different reasons, obviously for reasons why we're all here, but it actually will connect Stockdale Highway to the Kern River bike trail. And so we're excited about that ability to connect those two major intersections for the residents of Bakersfield.
Yeah, and I was looking at the plans, and the plans for this are quite advanced to be able to align a two-way cycle track that crosses the freeway, multiple freeways, let alone railroads. Definitely a really exciting way to be connected to different parks in that area.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about this because when I first got elected, we actually had a series of community meetings with the residents of West Park. That those folks are directly impacted by the new alignment. And before we even broke ground on the project, we were able to hear feedback, and many of the residents had their input into what the design of this project would look like, and we were able to make revisions, including to the, especially with the trail. And so many folks, even in the neighborhood, are very excited about this amenity for our community.
Oh, and it looks like my pictures did not happen for this Hageman flyover project. I can send those to Garrett just to give people a sense of what is happening. But basically, Hageman flyover project is part of the TRIP, Thomas Roads Improvement Program. It's going to be able to connect residents of Northeast Bakersfield directly to downtown, the Kern River Parkway, and other active transportation projects. The designs for this are quite a feat of engineering, simply because it is extending a neighborhood street to cross the freeway, cross a couple railroad tracks, be alongside a canal, while also having a wide enough and safe enough bikeway for bicycle traffic and pedestrians. So I apologize, the picture didn't make it on there, but this would be connecting Bob Smith's ward to the Kern River and the core areas of central Bakersfield and downtown. So once again, I apologize, those pictures did not make it on there. Up next, we'll be talking with Bob Smith about some more of the projects in his area. A little bit about Bob. Bob is a Bakersfield City Councilman representing Ward 4. His life in Bakersfield began over 35 years ago when he started Smith Tech USA, a civil engineering firm serving the Bakersfield and Kern communities. Bob is a lifelong cyclist and active transportation advocate, and he saw the need for a community bike kitchen and coalition to support the Bakersfield community. He founded Bike Bakersfield in 2005, and since then he was elected to represent Ward 4 on Bakersfield City Council, currently sits on the Water Board and the Kern Council of Governments Governing Board, all while being a proud father and grandfather. So welcome, Bob, and thanks for joining us today for this discussion.
Thank you. Yes, and the Frank Kern Canal path is something I've worked on. I was elected in 2012, and that's kind of when we got started working on it. It's a 5-mile extension from the existing Kern River Parkway all the way northwesterly through my ward. Took a long time to work with the Bureau of Reclamation, Frank Kern Authority, and many water agencies, and we're still working with railroad crossing, but we have, in the meantime, acquired all the funds through different grants. We have a active transportation grant and also a congestion mitigation air quality grant that will cover all of the construction for it. So we are doing the construction plans and hopefully start construction next year.
I'd like to highlight that this was probably this is one of the first successful bike projects that uses the Canal Authority approval or an MOU to use that. It's something that's been used in a lot of other communities. You can see by these pictures, the Salt River project in Arizona, and I believe this is Central Avenue in Fresno, if I recall correctly. But yeah, this is going to be the start of many projects that will aim to build bikeways and bike trails alongside canals, because we already know that that is the most efficient way to ship water. So why not add a bike lane, I guess.
And I think it's important to note that all of the canals, Bakersfield, being an agricultural community, has many canals, and all of those canals connect with the river. And along the river, we already have the existing bike path. So it creates a very good bicycle network when we can put bike trails along those canals.
Exactly. And I think you're right. It will attract people, and there's this project already set. So going forward, it may be not necessarily easier, but there will have that precedent to continue on with these canalways that include bike paths.
Right. This Frank Kern Canal, as we said, serves Northwest Bakersfield, which is my ward, and it really is one of the most difficult parts of Bakersfield to get out of. It's a nice place to live, but Rosedale Highway is a barrier, and it's arterial roads if you want to get from Northwest Bakersfield to downtown or South Bakersfield. And so this creates a much more low stress network to get to those places.
Okay, next we'll talk about the Heath Road alignment. Bob, if you'd like to.
Yeah, this is exciting. I actually, a few years ago, went and spoke with the developer Bold House Properties, who's developing most of West Bakersfield, and talked about some way to connect from that area to the existing bike path, and didn't have much luck at that time, but they kept stewing on it and talking to planners, and decided that would help their development and also be good for their residents in all of Bakersfield. So we worked with the water department, and the bike path towards the western part goes through what we call the 2,800 acres, which is a recharge facility for the city. The city of Bakersfield has water rights on the Kern River, and high flow years we are able to recharge groundwater, and the bike path runs through that. And so we're able to connect this future neighborhood to the north with the existing bike path by running through that recharge basin. So we worked with, as I say, the water board, the developer, the Kern County Water Agency has the canal up there. We had to put a bridge over, and the county. And so again, everybody cooperating, and we have a CMAQ grant for that, and that should be constructed next year.
I think it's interesting to note, Bob, in your experience, that it really took persistence to get some of these projects even on the table of some of the decision makers. I think your advocacy over years has shown that there is a positive impact in adding the bike network, adding to it. But like you were saying, it took a couple of years for actual people to take that seriously in terms of this particular project.
Right. It takes a long time to change a culture, and it's not just Bakersfield, but the whole United States is an automobile culture, and so we just keep chipping away, and it, as more people get out and more people ride and you have more infrastructure, it becomes apparent. And through this COVID, everybody is now a bicycle rider, and if we didn't have the infrastructure, we didn't have the facilities that we have, through this time, people wouldn't be able to get out and get the exercise and the mental and physical amenities that go along with that.
Thanks, Bob. Lastly, our last presenter is going to be Forrest Barnes from CalBike. We'll be talking about the Central Valley Bikeways project, which is focused also in the downtown area. But in terms of this webinar, we're talking about connectivity between infrastructure projects across the county and city. So I think Forrest's discussion on this project will show how widely resident feedback can impact the outcome of a project. So a little bit about Forrest. Forrest hails from Bakersfield and now splits his time between his hometown and San Francisco. Environmental mobility and other social injustices in the Central Valley led him to the UC Berkeley and later UCLA, where he earned a master's degree in urban and regional planning. Before joining CalBike, Forrest worked in advocacy, political organizing, and political campaigns in Bakersfield and the East Bay. He later served as a transportation planner for Kern County Advanced Planning and SFMTA's bike share team. Forrest continues to passionately advance biking, walking, and transit to confront transportation inequities and the climate emergency. So thank you, Forrest, for joining us and for your work in Bakersfield also.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm excited to talk about this project. And just backing up real quick. So what the the Bakersfield Bikeway, Central Valley Bikeways project is a low stress bike network planning document. And it is important to note what exactly that means when I say low stress bike network. And so as you can see, it's within 3 miles of the planned high-speed rail station as sort of a central area. So it includes areas also like Oildale and East Bakersfield. But so when we think about low stress bikeways, we generally use the idea of 8 to 80 design. And so that's to say, if an 8-year-old or an 80-year-old would feel comfortable biking on the network, then it would be considered low stress. And so that's really and then here we have a little definition of what that actually looks like. So like the Kern River bike path is something we consider low stress, whereas like a bike lane on Oak Street, for example, might be like something that Asha or I or Bob would write on as fearless riders, and it's very useful. But we're really in this project thinking about planning for riders who aren't necessarily enthusiastic cyclists. And so part of this is funded with Kern COG, and Bike Bakersfield's our main partner. But so what we did is we looked at like what already is planned in that Kern active transportation plan, and that we would consider low stress. And so in this case, it's things like the Frank Kern Canal and other bike boulevards and protected cycle tracks and bike lanes that we considered part of the network. And we basically looked at that and combine that with some GIS analysis to see like, well, where could people actually get to in each given block and like access things like jobs, parks, schools, and other public services. And so in that analysis, we think about that in order to sort of fill in the network. And so the partnership with Bike Bakersfield is really our community outreach to see where exactly people view as destinations to biking and barriers. And so here you can see there's some big clusters downtown of where people want to go, Beach Park, Bakersfield College. And so we combine this community data as well as on the next slide, you can see the barriers of where people cited as like places that they had issues biking in order to come up with a complete low stress bike network that's a sort of supplement to the existing active transportation plan. And so with that, we have gotten a lot of feedback about what some of the barriers are, and especially because we're focused on that 8 to 80 design. Over half of our folks that we've engaged with have said that they don't feel confident riding a bike, or are not necessarily people who are biking for recreation as much to get around. And so these barriers, like as you can see, are pretty clustered along major arterials, and the 99 in particular near Rosedale Highway and California. And so combining those with the destinations, we are going to propose what would be needed to be built to complete the low stress network completely around the area, and share that with community members, and make sure that it is actually useful. And so some of the things that I thought were pretty meaningful or interesting of like, and I think it makes sense of there's a question that is, if for people who say that they don't bike in this area, what are some of the reasons you don't bike in this area? The number one reason is I'm scared I'm gonna get hit by a car. And then the flip side of that is when asking community members what would make my bike ride more enjoyable, and it's of course safer routes to my destination also as the side to that, but also interesting things like trees for shade and taking into account like cyclist comfort. And as you can see, there's a lot of bike safety write-in responses to what are some of the barriers and things that would improve the bikeability of this area. And so that includes wider bike lanes, clearly marked lanes, and then driver and cyclist education. But so using these analyses of like the barriers, destinations, and then our bike network analysis tool to see what is accessible, it allows us to think of what exactly would be needed to complete that. And then again, for low stress routes, we also include basically any local street that you would feel comfortable having an 8-year-old bike on as part of the bike network. And so it's not necessarily just bike lanes. It could also be any sort of like bike boulevard or local street that is, you know, a low stress residential street. And so overall, I think that pretty much wraps up where we are at the moment. And then you can see at the next slide, we actually would like you to take the survey. And so I encourage you all to point your smartphone camera at the QR code on the screen and help us get more engagement on and where people feel barriers and destinations to biking. And so I think it's a pretty exciting project. It's been great working with Asha. It's part of a larger project in which I've got to work with the city of Bakersfield pretty extensively as well. And that's been really wonderful. And so that's really it for me. And the process is really like sort of in the planning stage still. And so we look forward to sharing, you know, the results of the planning and what we think would be the, you know, meet the community's need for low stress connections best. And so that's it for me. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Forrest. One final comment about the Central Valley Bikeways project is that it's residents identifying where they want to go and what's stopping them. And we'll be basically mapping that and determining what's the lowest stress route that we can suggest to a resident to get where they want to go without having to cross a 3-lane collector street necessarily. So this project is going to get feedback from residents for the future planning of active transportation, but it can also help improve on the plans and existing infrastructure that we already have. So in terms of talking about all of these other projects that were mentioned in this webinar, this resident feedback is the integral component in making sure that all of these projects are going to be used by residents and are used safely. So yeah, like Forrest said, please take out your phone. All you have to do is shoot your camera towards the QR code and a link will pop up. It's a 5-minute survey, and any feedback and any locations that you can tag using the Google Maps feature would be great. Otherwise, Garrett, I think we're ready to open up for comments and questions whenever you were ready.
Great. All right. Thank you. So I first wanted to ask, is this survey, is this for Bakersfield residents, Kern County residents, or like any participant on the webinar?
Well, so this project, we're doing the same low stress bike network planning in Fresno and Merced as well, but it will, it is primarily for folks who are in the vicinity of those three cities. So in the whole county, I guess I would say. And then if you're not a resident, that's one of the first questions, and you're still welcome to share the link, with folks you do know in the Central Valley.
Sure,
Yeah,
all
one
right.
thing I tell people about the survey is even if you don't live necessarily in the downtown or the project area, you still are traveling through it. And whether you park your car and walk around for something, you're traveling and you're using active transportation within that area. So everyone's answers and experiences are relevant.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, that was amazing. There's so much neat stuff there, so much cool stuff going on. So I've got some questions that I have, but I also want to shout out to all of our participants today. Feel free to type questions in chat, and I will read them out and convey them to our panelists here. But while I give people a chance to type some questions, I've got a few already. One of which sort of occurred to me as I was listening. Bob, you made a really great like mental illustration for me of how, hey, these canals connect to the river. So why don't or I guess Asha made this point, I'm sorry. Why don't or we should have bike infrastructure sort of connect the same way? It sort of makes sense. And so I kind of wanted to ask about that is, does the existing bike infrastructure, such as, a central corridor, such as the Kern River Parkway, does that make the argument easier for other connecting infrastructure, like some of the other programs we've seen today?
Well, we actually, in our 2013 Master Bikeways Plan, we do show future bikeways along all those canals. But there's a note saying, that we have to get permission from the thing about the canals is it's multiple agencies. One canal could be one district and another canal is another district. So each is a separate battle in getting approval. But yes, our plan does show it, and this Bryant-Kern is really the second one, because the Kern River Parkway runs along what they call the Carrier Canal in northeast Bakersfield, but the city of Bakersfield had the rights for that canal, and so it made it a little easier. But yeah, always the first one's the hardest, we hope, and we hope to move forward that way.
All right, thank you. And that does sort of get into another question that I had as well, which was how we or how you work with the canal authorities. So that was interesting to hear, that there's different authorities, and it makes sense that you sort of get started, you work with one, and you can show you work to the others. It looks like we had a question from chat here. It's very specific. What was the update time frame with the bike path, or the updated time frame out to Buena Vista? And so I don't know which one specifically that is, but it looks like they're citing some volume data, some cyclist volume data here.
I believe that's the Kern County western extension that goes out to the Buena Vista Aquatic Center out there. And so that is currently under construction, but we're starting the project underneath us. Interstate 5 and State Route 43, those portions are going in first. So we hope by summer of 2021, the whole thing will be complete, but it's currently underway.
All right, thank you. And we have some more questions. I think this one gets at some of the things we talked about at our last webinar, which is good because we definitely want to include these same, conversations and link to it, which is how long is the Kern Canal bike path, and how well is the current network connected? And I wonder if Kern Canal Bike Path, they mean like the Kern River Parkway.
Yeah, the Kern River Parkway is about 30 miles from end to end at this time. And I think it's very well connected. It kind of diagonals through town. It runs northeasterly to southwesterly, and it runs, you know, within 1 mile of downtown and that mile has a nice bike lane to it. All the arterials cross it, and again, arterials are high stress, but those arterials do have bike lanes on them. And it also connects, there's a bike path from it to Cal State Bakersfield. There's a bike path that crosses the river over to baseball fields. And there's other existing connections. There's a connection on the north side that runs to Riverview Park, which connects to Oildale. And that's kind of what we're talking about today. We're making more and more connections to this main spine, which is the Kern River Bike Path.
Mm-hmm.
But just to clarify, the Frank Kern Canal project is the first canal project that isn't owned by the city of Bakersfield exclusively.
Correct.
Okay, I'll move on to our next question from chat, which is about e-bikes. And I guess this one could both be engineering wise, like do these paths sort of take into account e-bikes? But also they asked an interesting question about incentivizing e-bikes. Are there any discussions about programs that incentivize e-bikes?
I mean, I can speak to that, or just to piggyback off of what Andre said. So I'm also working on assisting the city of Bakersfield on implementing its bike share grant. And that is really the goal, to like have the bike share bikes be electric. So as part of the system. And so I think Bob and Andre could speak to personally owned e-bikes.
Yeah, I've been riding for about 3 years now, a cargo e-bike, and it's definitely the future of transportation in my mind. But the KernCog is applying for grants. We're trying to get money so we can actually distribute e-bikes in underserved communities to provide transportation there. And so I would say we're working on it. As Forrest mentioned, you know, the bike share program is going to be an e-bike program, and we're working on more e-bikes. We have not, you know, cities, when they passed the state passed the e-bike law, the individual cities could outlaw if they wanted to on their bike paths, and we chose not to. And I think that's turned out to be very wise, because the e-bikes are obviously growing, and they are a great amenity tool for a lot of people that don't have the physical youth and strength to ride the distances and in the heat and the elevations that, you know, Bakersfield has and a lot of California has.
All right, thank you. And I see there's a lot of questions in chat, but I'm sort of going in order. And I see one of our participants wants to underline some of the data that they posted earlier, which I think the broad point, I think sort of agrees with what we've been saying, or what our panelists have been saying, which is that, you know, people are using these, especially even more, you know, nowadays, you know, in our you know, COVID environment, but perhaps not when it's smoky, but perhaps other times. But I wanted to get at that data question, because I know that came up at our last webinar as well, is do we have measurements for data? Do we have standards? And I will say, maybe zooming out from that question a little bit, what are some of the like measurable outcomes that we hope to see from some of these projects? And I know we saw like Cal EnviroScreen mentioned. So are there like bike volume outcomes? Are there health outcomes?
I know that KernCog does bicycle counts along some of the high trafficked corridors. So when these are put in, it would be great to see some of those counts happening. What was the other question? There was like a second part to your question. I apologize.
I'm sorry, no. Talking about like other health outcomes that like Cal EnviroScreen measures.
I mean, getting more people on bikes at the end of the day is going to decrease the vehicle miles traveled and the pollution burden specifically around, those freeways and high collector streets. Like, it's already been proven that when you live near a freeway, you're exposed to more diesel exhaust and other fossil fuel exhaust. And getting more people out on bikes on good air quality days would not only reduce like the traffic congestion, it would also reduce the amount of mobile sources of fossil fuel emissions that we have. And of course, it's not just a Bakersfield problem. We are a bowl for the valleys, for the state's, air pollution. We basically just collect it here. So it's more about these big picture and incremental changes that are happening to the transit system that are going to have a bigger impact on the public health. But for immediately putting in projects that increase the safe access to transportation projects will immediately decrease the amount of cars in traffic, the amount of collisions that may happen, and many other health impacts.
And I'd like to add to that for the complete low stress bike network planning. So really, one of the big measurements is like how accessible are things around you. So like how easily can you bike to a grocery store on a low stress route? Like how easily can you bike to a park on a low stress route? And I think really, in general, all of these projects, like it's a little harder to measure than a bike count, but in general, like improving access to people to get where they want to go safely, comfortably on a bike.
I would also add economically. I mean, people in poverty areas spend 30 to 50% of their income on transportation. And if you can create low stress bicycle networks and make it culturally acceptable to transport yourself and your family on a bicycle, then that's more income, disposable income, that you can spend on things other than transportation.
Sure. All right. That's a great, like, multifaceted set of answers there. Thank you so much. So we are out of time, and I do recognize that there are a number of questions, including some really interesting specific ones that we don't have time for. So I will encourage folks in chat whose questions we haven't had time to answer to reach out. I think we definitely have some answers to some of these questions. I see one about reporting things. I know we definitely have some resources for those. So I would encourage them to reach out to me and reach out to our other panelists. And I think I can connect you with them, if nothing else. But I will wrap it up because we are out of time. Thank you to all of our presenters. Thank you to Asha, Bob, Andre, Forrest, and Yolanda for your time on this and for sharing your knowledge and experiences. I encourage everyone to take what you've learned today and apply it to your work. I also want to extend a special thank you to our interpreter, Javier. Finally, we will send these slides as well as a link to the record. We will send these slides out as an email and a link to the recording of the webinar available, and that will be available for you soon. And then you can reply to me in that email and we can pass some of these questions around, or I can pass some of these questions on because we definitely don't want the conversation to end today. So thanks so much for sharing part of your day, and goodbye.